Hello, my name is TJ Hart, and today my presentation is on the ketogenic diet in strength athletes. The title of the research article I read is "A Low Carbohydrate Ketogenic Diet Reduces Body Mass Without Compromising Performance in Powerlifting and Olympic Weightlifting Athletes." So, to sum it up, these two sports, powerlifting and Olympic weightlifting, are weight class sports. This is where their competitors are split into different weight classes in order to compete with others that are around the same body weight. And a lot of time, this leads to these athletes wanting to lose weight in order to be on top or as heavy as they can be at a low weight class from their everyday body weight. An example of this would be someone that may be walking around at 84 kilograms body weight might want to compete in the 81 kilogram weight class. And so they would lose that weight in order to weigh around 80.5 or as close as they can to that 81 kilogram cutoff. And a lot of times this leads to these athletes sacrificing their strength and performance to be at a lower body weight due to the fact that they lack the education of what diet they really should be consuming in order to lose weight but also maintain their performance. Because a lot of times they're eating these diets that have a caloric or energy reduction, and that leads to their loss of performance. So in this article, their hypothesis was low carbohydrate, high fat diets might therefore be a useful weight making strategy for athletes competing in weight class sports. This is an alternative to the usual caloric deficit diet that a lot of these competitors are doing. So during the study of this research paper, they took 14 individuals. These individuals happened to be elite level Olympic weightlifting or powerlifters, and they split them up into two groups. One group consumed a usual diet during the time frame of the experiment, and the other group consumed a low carbohydrate ketogenic diet. So that usual diet group was eating somewhere greater than 250 grams of carbohydrates a day, so about usual for an everyday person, as well as the low carbohydrate ketogenic group ate a significantly less amount of carbohydrates per day, around 50 grams or 10% intake of carbohydrates per day. So they measured the results at 3 different times. They measured a baseline right at the start of the experiment, 3 months, and then 6 months. And what they measured was they measured lifting performance, body composition, resting metabolic rate, blood glucose, and blood electrolytes. So during those 3 checkpoints where they conducted the measurements, they would have these subjects come into the lab, and when they came in, they would be at a fasted state. They also had no caffeine, no alcohol, and no intense exercise 24 hours prior to coming in. And so when they're at this fast state like that, they were able to test their body composition, resting energy expenditure, and blood measurements. So after they did all those measurements and everything, they were allowed to eat a meal that still followed their diet, whatever group they are in. And then after that, they tested their 1 rep max in each of the 2 sports, their competitive lifts, where Olympic weightlifting would have been snatch and clean and jerk, and powerlifting would have been bench, squat, and deadlift. And this chart right here kind of sums up what exactly they did for the experiment. So they assessed them for eligibility, randomized them into the 2 diet groups, and then from there they were able to measure these things at the 3 checkpoints, and then being able to come up with an analysis at the end. So the results were heavily in favor with the hypothesis, meaning that the subjects who were on the ketogenic diet resulted in a lower amount of fat mass and a lower lean mass, thus leading to a lower total body weight compared to the usual diet personnel. And But the surprising thing is that these people consuming the ketogenic diet had a significant loss in body mass, but their lifting performance was maintained. They maintained that strength in that one math, or maintained around somewhere close to that 1 rep max that they had prior to the experiment. Thus, it greatly increased their power to weight ratio because their weight was down lower. Yeah, so they were able to maintain that strength in in those lifts that they compete in. So this experiment basically showed that low carbohydrate ketogenic diet could be a great tool for these weight class athletes in order to lower their body weight and make that lighter weight class while still being able to maintain their strength and performance on competition day. So the evidence shows that these low carbohydrate ketogenic diets could be a successful way for these athletes to lose weight, and this is primarily due because the ketogenic diet reduced stored glycogen, which in glycogen is it promotes water retention. So the main source of their body weight reduction during the experiment was through stored glycogen and water loss, rather than muscle mass. A quote from the article says that a low carbohydrate ketogenic diet showed a metabolism that shifted in fuel availability and utilization that includes increases in fat oxidation and a production of ketones as an alternate fuel source when glucose is low. So these athletes were in the ketogenic state during their when they were eating this diet, and so that promoted them to be able to use other body fuels for their resistance training. For example, like fat rather than glucose, and they produced ketones through that. So they were able to use the fat instead of glucose for their anaerobic movements, their like real high intensity movements for a short period of time, rather than that glucose. So in conclusion, this test showed that a ketogenic diet could be a really big thing for those competing in weight class sports, in particularly strength training sports. And I think I really do think it's a huge thing for these sports, because prior to this, there was no really study of the ketogenic diet in resistance training. Most of the ketogenic diet experiments they did has been in endurance sports like cross country and other things like that. And so this is a big step for strength sports, and not only strength sports alone, but they also could help in all weight class sports. Sports like MMA, boxing, or wrestling could also benefit from this, because they are also losing a significant amount of body weight in order to compete in a lighter weight class while not having to sacrifice performance through the ketogenic diet. These are my references. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation.